What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast, a very special edition of the Next Pats podcast. It is our NBC Sports Boston mock draft extravaganza. We're bringing in Patriots insider Tommy Curran, as well as resident draftnik DJ Bean, so that we can roll through the entirety of the first round, and we will be alternating in terms of the picks. So Tom Curran's about to be on the clock with number 1 overall for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Where will he go there? Where will the Patriots go with number 21 overall? Stick around and find out. All right, so we're here. We're ready for the 2022 NBC Sports Boston Mock Draft Spectacular. And we're just going to launch right into this thing. Our guy, Tommy Curran, Patriots insider, the mock man who couldn't find a mock turtleneck but brought the real thing, is going to start us off at pick number 1 overall. You are the Jacksonville Jaguars. Go.
I am the Jaguars, and I'll take Aiden Hutchinson. He's a defensive end out of Michigan. Happy to have him aboard. Pretty much chalk, although things are getting a little uncertain with the Jags at the top. As they say, they're considering 4 different candidates.
If I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm not psyched that after seeing what the Bengals did and being able to add a stud to go with their offensive stud, there's no real top guys offensively, but such is life. Your team stinks. You have to take the best player. Speaking of which, I'm the Detroit Lions, dressed the part, and they're in a similar situation where if there were, like, say, a good quarterback for them to take, maybe they would reach for one, but if you were to reach for a quarterback at number 2 in this draft, Phil, your arms would give out, and it would be one of those, like, torture mechanisms that Pirates used to use.
Go gadget
You can't stretch that long, so they go with Trayvon Walker, who right now is actually moving up the ranks, too, and potentially he ends up being the first overall pick. They take the athletic guy from Georgia, who wasn't that great in college, but they hope he can be in the pros.
All kinds of traits. A kneecap biter, too, when it comes to the energy and the effort. Dan Campbell will love that. I'm on the board for the Houston Texans at number 3 overall. Patriots South there in Houston, right, with Nick Caserio. So go to a familiar program at a premium position. Take Evan Neal from Alabama, the offensive tackle, 6'7", a ridiculous athlete at his size, one of the freakiest players in the country when it comes to his movement skills. You can find all kinds of fun videos online about him jumping on boxes, sort of Tom E. Curran-esque, actually, when it comes to that sort of thing. So he is next level in terms of the athleticism, same way Trayvon Walker is on the defensive side, but the Texans go Evan Neal. So, Curran, you're up again at number 4 overall, and you have got the Jets, Jets.
And I, as Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, couldn't be happier to find that Kayvon Thibodeau is still on the board. So I grab him out of Oregon, plunk him down on the edge, and I say to myself, we might have gotten the most exposed. I don't know where all this talk came that Pete didn't love football, because I see a guy who loves football. They plug him in, he's ready to terrorize.
I mean, historically, when the Jets draft a defensive end who people worry might not care that much about football, it works out tremendously for them. Shout out Vernon Golston. From New York to New York, I am the Giants, also kind of dressed for that. Blue's a good color to wear. I'm going Ike Ekwonu because although they have taken swings and misses on the offensive line, Phil, they keep committing to Daniel Jones. Each and every year, they're like, Danny Jones is our guy, so they got to try to get him any sort of help. And they go Ike Ekwonu, the violent blocker out of NC State.
Violent, nasty, physical. I think he actually has some work to do when it comes to his work in pass protection. So in a perfect world for the Giants, he will end up helping Daniel Jones. I'm not sure year 1 he's necessarily going to be helping him all that much, other than creating all kinds of running room for that Giants running game. I'm back on the clock, although DJ, given the jacket and the shirt combination, that's a sweater actually, I believe, you should be picking for the Carolina Panthers. I will do it instead. I'm going to go with Charles Cross. They are not going to go with a quarterback here. I think it's smart for them to wait. Doesn't mean they will be smart and wait on quarterback when the draft actually comes around. But Charles Cross, tremendous pass protector. He's coming from an air raid kind of offense, and so he doesn't have a lot of experience blocking in the running game, but as a pass protector, he has everything you want. Curran, you're back on the board for another New York team.
Let's hit it again with the Giants. Giants following up the offensive line pick with Jermaine Johnson, defensive end, Florida State from the Seminoles. Really, Phil, I think this is going to be one of those drafts for both of the New York teams where they lay out right in front of them, and they can actually, if they all hit all 4 picks, create some real buzz for themselves.
Jermaine Johnson, too, a player that people think that in a couple of years when we look back on this, we say, how did that guy end up going 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, wherever he went? Although just as easily it could be Whoops, what happened there? Speaking of what happened there, why didn't the Falcons take a quarterback last year when everybody was taking quarterbacks and there were all sorts of quarterbacks available? And they said, you know what, we'll go with the tight end, even though Curran, I remember we both really like that tight end, and he's very quite good. Yes, they do need a quarterback because although they do have your guy, correct? They went out.
Marcus Mariota's there. DJ, I don't know why they need a quarterback when you've got Marcus Mariota, but be that as it may.
They had the prototypical, when you envision a quarterback, size, everything. That's kind of Matt Ryan. There's not really that option there right now, but they go with Malik Willis, a shorter guy, a little bit of a thing. But if he's the best quarterback in this draft, then is 9th really too early to take him? I think that after not taking a flyer last year, this would be the time for them to do so.
And this is the trouble you get in when you're in a draft that is not quarterback heavy and you need a quarterback. You are rolling dice and digging holes.
Titans, we saw years ago with, what's my man's name?
Jake Locker.
Jake Locker. We've seen it time and again where a team just needs a quarterback and say, he's a first-round prospect. We got a first-round pick. Why wouldn't it work out?
But he has the traits that NFL teams want to bet on, even after last season, seeing how it went for some of those rookie quarterbacks and seeing how it went for Mac Jones, the guy who was ready but was anything but electric, ends up being the best of the bunch, and who knows where things go from there. But teams still want those high-level traits at that spot. I'm up next with the Seahawks. This is an easy pick for me. To me, he is a top 6, maybe even a top 5 player in this draft class, but he goes all the way at 9 to the Seahawks. It's Sauce Gardner, the corner out of Cincinnati. Every bit of 6'3", played a ton of man coverage at Cincinnati and was, in terms of production, on the ball production, and in terms of quarterback rating against every metric you could find, just about the best cornerback in the nation. He's going to be playing a little bit more zone in Seattle, but he's built for it. He's that long press type of corner. He's their next Richard Sherman.
Lions, Giants, Texans, there's so many teams higher in that top 10 that you think when they're on the board, they'd be tempted by this guy.
No doubt.
And that could start the run on cornerbacks because this is a cornerback-heavy first round where you can get plenty of talent there. But I'm actually going to give the Jets a compliment to Zach Wilson. That's going to be Garrett Wilson, no relation, from Ohio State. He's a wide receiver, and he's going to be a player that, that's a team that could change if they're able to extract Deebo Samuel this week. But you have to get guys for Zach Wilson to throw to.
And honestly, Phil, that's a move I like for them because it's 3 years in a row in which they have thrown relatively high picks, be it first-round picks, second-round picks, with Denzel Mims. I forget the guy, the short, fast guy that they took last year in the second round.
Out of Ole Miss. Yeah, their slot receiver.
Forgetting his name.
Yep.
Braxton Berrios.
But that's 3 years in a row in which they've used pretty significant capital on the receiver position. It's something that we talk about with the Patriots where, if you're not good at it, just at least keep trying.
You got to save your job. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You have to save your job if you're Joe Douglas. So you better find a toy. And the way they've talked about Deebo Samuel at least underscores to me desperation at that spot.
Well, it is a premium position, right? We don't think of it necessarily the same way we think of pass rusher or offensive tackle or even corner maybe, but we probably should. It's just so valuable a spot. And the teams that have the best complements at receiver are typically the teams that are among the last left standing. Let's just do a very quick top 10 sort of recap, and we have our NBC Sports Boston big board off camera here that we can look at. A bunch of edge defenders off the board. You've got a bunch of tackles off the board. You only have one quarterback off the board. And this is a problem for the Patriots, guys. You're picking at 21 overall, and this may or may not be the only quarterback that gets picked before the Patriots go. Obviously, they're not in the quarterback market. You would love for it to be a year where 4 or 5 quarterbacks end up going before you pick, because then all that other talent and those other positions gets pushed right down to you. So not going the Patriots' way in that respect, but let's get to pick number 11, DJ. You're up with the Washington Commanders.
One team, Phil, would be stunned to see take a quarterback right now would be the Commanders because we saw it. They made their trade. They got their guy. They got Carson Wentz. So now they do what I think the teams that might not necessarily have the guy should do, which is act like you have the guy, because we see quarterback movement all the time. If Carson Wentz doesn't work out, you know what? Some year, somebody else is going to be available. So teams, build yourself up as though you've got that star quarterback. Get the weapons, get the offensive line. So in this case, I'm going with the tall guy. I'm going with Drake London out of USC, and they continue to add weapons in the receiving game.
Basketball player, going to be somebody who makes a lot of plays at the catch point, quote-unquote a contested catch guy.
Love a catch point guy.
I think people here in New England would look at that pick and say, better you than us because we've done the whole contested
We've
catch
tried
guy
that.
thing, and it didn't work out really well. But Drake London is a little bit more fluid, I would say, Tom, in terms of being that basketball player. You can see him use crossover types of body movements at the line of scrimmage to get himself free, whereas N'Keal Harry really was so stiff at the line, it was hard for him to ever get off.
It's funny to hear Chris Sims, and he talked about it on the Patriots Talk podcast, how much he looked at Drake London as being a guy who could just go up the ladder, and he wins 50-50 balls 90% of the time. So it'll be fascinating to see if he satisfies that trait.
There's another corner here that has slid all the way to pick number 12, and I am up for the Minnesota Vikings right now. New front office there, very analytically driven front office now in Minnesota. This is an analytical kind of pick because the analytics guys love themselves some corners. They get a great one here in Derek Stingley from LSU. This is a guy who, if he was draft eligible 2 years ago as a true freshman, he probably would have been a top 5 pick. That's how good he was as a true freshman in the SEC. He dominated. There is practice tape of him going against Jamar Chase, his teammate at the time. This was the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase take on the world year in 2019. And he was locking Chase down. Physical, all kinds of ball skills, really good athlete. He's coming off an injury. He's been banged up the last couple of years, but the value is still there. This is a very good pick. Maybe the best value pick, easy for me to say, thus far through the first 12 picks, in my opinion, for the Vikings.
All right, we're going to go with Chuck for a Nick Caserio-led franchise. And the Houston Texans are on the clock now at 13, and they're going to take a safety. They're going to take Kyle Hamilton and find that stability at the back end of their defense with a guy who I've seen in some mock drafts be a top 5 guy. So they're giddy to find that player there.
They should be, because I spoke to an executive just recently who said, listen, there are certain positions that the league is clearly devalued. Running back, obviously, linebacker to an extent, safety's in that conversation as well. But, he said, if you feel like there's a transcendent player at one of those positions, you feel good about taking that position in the first round. He thinks Kyle Hamilton is a potentially transcendent type of safety, and so more than worthy of a top half of the first round kind of pick.
Is that all because of his size and speed? I mean, he's McCourty-esque, but even bigger. Is that correct?
He's much bigger, and he did not test well in the 40, but I've spoken to people who feel like that is more of a training thing. That's more of a technique, get-off, track stance kind of issue than it is a true speed issue, because when you watch him on tape, he has all kinds of gas. Yeah, so he is fine in that regard. I think he's going to be a great player.
And I agree with you, Phil, on the position of safety being among those that have been devalued. But an important thing if you're the Texans, with how you've used your draft picks over the years, and Davis Mills was a good draft pick, this is an idiot-proof pick. Mm-hmm. This is not going to be well, you blew that one.
What's the floor?
Right, exactly. The floor is to, let's call him a Mac Jones of safeties, although it's a lot better than Mac Jones. Who am I? I am the Ravens, who, if you remember last year, they did a little wheeling and dealing. They traded away Orlando Brown. Their offense wasn't so great. We have questions about what Lamar Jackson's going to be there. So they say, you know what? Let's pump the brakes here. Let's try to continue to build back that offensive line. They go with Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa.
Love that. Freaky athlete. This is a guy who probably, from a Patriots point of view, is the best fit here in New England, and somebody who I think has the potential to, on draft night, slide all the way to 21. But here he goes many picks earlier to a franchise that values the same kinds of things that the Patriots do. We don't often think of Baltimore being part of the Belichick tree, but it kind of is. After Ozzie Newsome was there for so long, and now it's the same basically core of people that are still operating things there. So it's a similar mindset, and it's the similar types of things that they value. So Trevor Penning makes a lot of sense, even though he's not from a bigger program, went to the Senior Bowl, played well there, and has all kinds of physical characteristics that are just phenomenal. I'm up next. Another guy with phenomenal physical characteristics is Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle out of Georgia, 340 pounds. He basically tested like a slightly below average wide receiver. This guy is an absolute alien when it comes to the ability that he has to move all of that mass that he has. He's going to the Philadelphia Eagles at 15 overall. I think you could look at Howie Roseman, Tom, and you can call him one of, maybe Bill Belichick is the OG when it comes to analytics, but he is an analytics guy through and through, even though he's not a 30-something GM. And I think he sees the numbers that are associated with Jordan Davis, and he'll say, the numbers say that guy's going to be pretty damn good. Give him to me.
One of the interesting things about Jeff Lurie, the Eagles owner, is he has been doing draft research and following along in the draft when he was a Hollywood producer. He would sit in his garage and break stuff down during the drafts in 92, 93, 94. Nobody embraces the draft as an owner with the same passion that Lurie has to my knowledge. And that analytics stuff, he feels as if he's scouty himself, as does Roseman, so they depend upon all that stuff. So it'll be singing the exact right song. I got the New Orleans Saints right now.
You do.
And there's no Sean Payton.
There's not.
But there's a Mickey Loomis. And Mickey Loomis is going to address 2 positions, the next 2 picks. And I have New Orleans. The first place he's going to go is for the guy who should be a layup. It's Jamison Williams, wide receiver, Alabama, going to New Orleans at number 16 overall.
And this, honestly, Phil, as I become the Los Angeles Chargers, dressing the part, although I do prefer their royal blue or their, I like the piss jerseys.
You really did a great job with the jacket.
Honestly, it ended up.
Well, you knew you were going to have all the blues.
Exactly. I often do have the blues. Shout out depression. But as the Chargers, I'm upset that Jordan Davis went at 15 to the Philadelphia Eagles because he would have been perfect as you look at their offseason. It's like their whole offseason was a reaction to what happened in that treacherous Week 18 game against the Raiders. They try to build up their defense, and if you have Jordan Davis there, you know what? Maybe you get one of those stops late in that game, especially in overtime. But they've added cornerbacks. They'd love to add on the defensive line. There really isn't the pick there now with Jordan Davis gone. They also would have loved Jamison Williams to really bolster their receivers. So instead, back-to-back years, they say, let's go offensive line in the first round. They took Rashawn Slater last year. That ended up being a fantastic pick. Even if I was kind of afraid he was going to be Isaiah Wynn-esque, wrong. He is much, much better. They stay on the offensive line. They go with Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M, who honestly might be more of a guard at this point, but if he ends up being a tackle, all the better.
He played 4 different positions along the offensive line this past season before finally settling in at guard and being dominant. So if you put him on that right side, it felt like the right side was always the problem for the Chargers last year. Put him on the right side, whether it's guard or tackle. You're probably upgrading either one. So another guy who feels like a Patriots fit. Coming from the SEC, all that versatility, coached by Jimbo Fisher. The Patriots have taken all of these Florida State offensive linemen in the past when Jimbo Fisher was there. So there's a connection there. They know he's going to be well coached. But he doesn't get to 21 overall in this situation. He goes at 17 to the Chargers. I'm up for the Eagles once again, and we're at 18 overall. And the Eagles, again, have a real need here. Teams are trying to get to the draft without glaring, obvious needs in their starting lineup. The Eagles have one at corner, and so they get, I think, the best of what's left from the top 3 at this position. It's Trent McDuffie out of Washington. A little bit undersized, but versatile, can play inside and out, a great tackler, physical, good ball skills. He is going to be a home run wherever he ends up because he's going to be able to come in right away, start, no questions asked, and just give you dependable play from day one.
We didn't want to try and get involved with all the gymnastics that would be on the table if we started doing trades. But that would be a prime spot for the Patriots to trade, wouldn't it? It's the Eagles' second first-round pick. It's coming back-to-back practically with the 15th overall pick. Could you see that being a spot, especially with a player like McDuffie on the board as opposed to who you might be ticketed to take in a couple of picks?
No doubt, because you also have a really good relationship with that front office there. We know how often they've worked together, joint practices. They just did it again last summer. Bill Belichick and Howie Roseman spent about a half hour before the game that week just chopping it up, just shooting the breeze. So I think that's a great call on your part, Tom, especially because it is the second Eagles first-round pick. I like that idea a lot. I don't know if they'll be able to execute it, but it makes a lot of sense.
Plus, track record. Roseman, the last 2 years, has shown that even if he has premium picks, he still wants to move back a little bit. He still wants to stockpile picks in future years. You saw that with the trade that they made with the Saints. Like, if extra picks are there to be taken, they want to keep doing that. It kind of reminds you of the Patriots of yesteryear. I am up.
Not up.
I am up in a second, but ladies and gentlemen, first, Tommy Curran.
Hi. The New Orleans Saints, again, are backing up picks, and this would, again, be a prime spot for the Patriots to hustle on up if somebody's there and they're worried about getting leapfrogged. We're not going to do the trades. We're going to have Mickey Loomis at 19, general manager, decide on can he lick it, stick it, and pick it out of Pitt.
I love that. I love that for them because the concerns that you have with Pickett are hand size related. Laugh at it all you want. They're there.
No, it's real.
But he's in a dome.
And arm strength. But now you're in a dome. And so you don't have to worry about being in that bad weather. He was in Pitt, had all kinds of fumbling issues. Like if the fumbling issues weren't on his resume, then maybe you could look at the hand size and say, see, he played in the cold. He played in the conditions. He wasn't losing the ball left and right, but he kind of was. Now you don't have to worry about that. Not only are you in a dome at home, but you're in the NFC South and you're playing in generally better climates, DJ, I think is a great move for New Orleans.
I would love to be on NBC Sports New Orleans if this were to happen, because it would remind me so much of, I believe it was 2011, 2012, when the Broncos had 2 first-round picks, and they took a receiver with the first one, Demaryius Thomas, and then they took Tim Tebow later in the first round. And I thought this with them, I thought this honestly when Mac Jones fell to the Patriots and they didn't move up for him. How much do you really like this quarterback? You're just willing to sit around and even draft other players, but that's also taking the risks and reading the board that if you're the Saints and you see things falling the way they are, okay, are the Chargers taking a quarterback? Probably not. Are the Eagles taking a quarterback? Potentially, but I don't think so. Okay, yeah, sure, you take Jameson Williams, who probably has the higher chance of being the star, and you hope for the best for the quarterback at 19.
And this is nice for the Patriots because, again, you get another quarterback to come off right before you pick. They're not at 20, they're 21, but just to have multiple guys at that position that you have no interest in go is a good thing for you in New England.
Curran and I got all of our singing out of the way. Every time I see this person's name, I sing it in a Dean Martin voice, so I will not do it. To the Pittsburgh Steelers, I send them a receiver out of Ohio State named Chris Olave. Olave! If you did it, I was going to do it.
I know.
It's a good
song. I had
song.
to. If you weren't going to do it, I was going to do it.
Song's called Volare. Look it up.
Oh, I like it. Listen, Pittsburgh has no issue developing wide receivers. So you could look at this and say, do they really need to dip in to this position in the first round? But I think Olave is just so damn good that it makes a lot of sense for them.
The first round quarterbacks are gone. They've got, laugh all you want, they've got like an adult at quarterback. Mitch Trubisky is fine. And again, they're a team that I think is a candidate, especially if the quarterbacks are gone, to say, all right, let's act like we do have the guy. Let's build up a situation and make ourselves a quarterback away if Trubisky does falter.
And we just talked about how teams are going to be willing to trade down this year. It feels like everybody wants to trade down. If there's an opportunity for them to maybe move up, maybe to pick number 32 for Detroit's second first-round pick, and they want to roll with a Desmond Ridder and take a flyer on somebody like that who you're not really sure what it's going to look like early in his career, that's something they could do as well. Now, the Patriots are up. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. We have all kinds of talent on the board here, guys. We've got multiple cornerbacks that are first-round projections, and Andrew Booth from Clemson and Kyer Elam from Florida. We've got multiple receivers that I really like. Traylon Burks from Arkansas. You can use him as sort of a supersized Deebo Samuel. That's kind of how he was used in the SEC. All kinds of success there. You've also got Sky Moore from Western Michigan. You've got Christian Watson from North Dakota State, some great athletes from smaller programs. But the Patriots are going to go defense here because Bill Belichick has Buffalo still fresh in his mind.
As he should.
As he should.
That happens.
And so the question is, does he go corner or does he go with someone who I think is making a Will Forkian kind of slide down the first round board? This guy, according to a lot of people in football, is thought to be a borderline top 10 player in this draft. He's fallen all the way to 21, and the Patriots are going to take him here. It's linebacker Devin Lloyd out of Utah. Depending on who you talk to, he is considered an elite player and one of the cream players in this year's draft class, in a class that's not all that deep at the top. So for the Patriots to get this guy to fall to them at 21, when there's really considered to be like 15, maybe 16 quote-unquote first-round players in terms of their grade, for the Patriots to get one at 21 is a huge coup for them.
Tell me the dimensions. Tell the people the dimensions. And also a good Patriots defensive comp. Where will he be in their defense?
So there isn't one in the Patriots defense. He's not as big as what the Patriots usually draft at that position. So he's not Dante Hightower. He's not Kyle Van Noy. He's not Jawan Bentley. He might be Jamie Collins-ish, but he's smaller than that. Jamie Collins was 250 pounds when he was drafted.
And we are.
Devin Lloyd is 6'3", 237 is where he measured. So not massive, but the Patriots told us this offseason. Matt Groh said it. They're willing to get smaller there because that's just what's coming to them from the college game. And when you play the way he does, great instincts, great in coverage. He's a former safety. He's played receiver as well back when he was in high school. A lot of comps to Fred Warner in San Francisco, who has become very quickly one of the best coverage linebackers and one of the best linebackers, period, in football. They actually, in terms of their measurables, height, weight, speed, all the testing at the combine, very, very similar if you stack them up side by side. So, DJ, if they get Fred Warner at pick number 21 in this year's draft, when they need to get faster at the second level, this is a home run pick for them.
Okay, so there's some myth, though, with the Patriots and value. They don't necessarily always care about value. But if a top 10 guy is falling to them, at a position that actually throughout the league is kind of being devalued
It is.
in the draft. Does Bill Belichick say this is too much for me to pass up?
I think he would, and I think the only reason he gets to 21 is because the rest of the league looks at it and says, off-the-ball linebacker, I can get a veteran who makes $3 million a year to give me serviceable play. I can't get that at tackle. I can't get that in a pass rusher. I can't even really get in a receiver maybe. So I know what you're saying there. I think the Patriots would sort of zing when the rest of the league is zanging and say, we don't care about that. We value linebackers. This guy's going to be on the field all the time for us.
Which 3 players on the board right now, and I think we can either put up the best remaining or just roll through a few of them. Which 3 players remaining would the Patriots really say, wow, we could use that guy too?
Well, the name that stands out to me the most first is a name that we haven't mentioned yet. I gave him to the Patriots in a mock draft a couple weeks ago when we were at the owners' meetings. It's Daxton Hill, the defensive back from Michigan. He might be listed as a safety. I'll call him a defensive back because he has all kinds of traits to play corner and play it really, really well. Ridiculous. 3-cone time, short shuttle, 40. He's a little undersized for a safety. He's about 190 pounds. He's not closer to that 200 mark that the Patriots usually like. But you could play him at safety. You could play him in the box. You could use him as a blitzer. You can play him in the slot. If they're going to a sort of positionless kind of coverage structure in the secondary, he would be perfect for them. And he has that Michigan background. He played for Don Brown. A lot of connections there that I think the Patriots would appreciate. So that's one, Tom. There's another name here at corner, so more specifically corner. It's Kaiir Elam, who we did mention, who's thought to be one of the best true man cover corners in this year's draft because he has the length, he has the size, he has the demeanor to be able to do that, and he ran in the 4.3s at the combine. The last name is a name that I think they should be considering. I'm not sure they will because of where he's coming from and because the position he plays, he won't be a starter for them right away. It's Bernard Raymond from Central Michigan. He's a tackle. He's a great athlete. He's young in terms of football years. He's still new to the position. He was a tight end just a couple years ago. He made the transition to tackle during COVID a couple years ago, but he put on all kinds of weight. He's maintained his athleticism. He went to the Senior Bowl, had a good week at the Senior Bowl. To me, because you don't get good tackles outside of the first round, you just don't unless you're paying a veteran, which we know how much that costs. I would be willing to invest in a tackle this year because you're going to need one. I think probably this year at some point somebody's getting hurt, but certainly next year.
I absolutely would. And Phil, I was waiting to see if all 3 of those names were going to be defensive players because as I look at this, you guys know my stance on Mac Jones. I think that we overrated him last year, and we are about to severely underrate this player because he's now going into a second year where he still doesn't necessarily have the weapons, and I think we do believe he necessarily does not have the coaching. So if I'm the Patriots, I'm kind of trying to do this guy a favor. And if there is a toss-up between a defensive player and you are totally warranted in still having Buffalo on your mind, but if there's a toss-up between a defensive player and an offensive lineman or a receiver, I think I'm leaning the offensive player. So many people have said, Tom Giles among them, that like if they take an offensive lineman, I'm going to pull my hair out. If they take an offensive lineman, I am perfectly happy because I think that right now you do need to do some sort of damage control for what you're setting up your second-year quarterback to be.
And that's why I've called this a position where the Patriots cannot lose. They can do that and shore up a defense that got embarrassed by Buffalo, or they can do that and kind of give themselves a fail-safe.
Give them a chance.
The coaching staff or the people who are, whoever that may be, in charge of the offense, leave Mac out to dry a little.
Are you applauding this pick if it is Devin Lloyd?
100%. Yeah. I don't think they can go wrong. I'm just going to nod and say, Phil, is he good? Phil's going to say, yeah, he's pretty good. And I'm going to say, good.
Well,
Let's
here's
get
the
this guy
issue.
in here.
Here's the issue, though. They are in a spot. I don't think Devin Lloyd's getting to them. He got to them in our scenario, in our mock draft.
Yeah, you're working with a couple of dummies.
It's not that. The people you talk to, I've spoken to coaches that are picking in the bottom half of the first round that could use a linebacker that haven't even really done a whole lot of work on Devin Lloyd because they assume he'll be gone.
So it might start a panic behind them. But those teams behind the Patriots will go, he's still dropping? He's still dropping? That's where people get busy, and they might jump ahead
like the
to
kid
New
in
Orleans.
They might jump ahead
Jaguars
to Philadelphia.
And because there are going to be teams, again, that are looking to trade back and stockpile picks. But I sort of waffle between where you're sitting, DJ, and how I feel about this player based on what I've been told because I look at linebacker and I say, they just re-signed Jawan Bentley, who's a starting caliber NFL linebacker, for $3 million a year.
100%.
You can't get a starting caliber tackle for $3 million a year, or a corner, or a receiver if you're buying those positions on the free agent market. So the draft, and the first round in particular, is such a valuable bullet. Do you want to use it at a position that has been relatively devalued across football, even in your own defense? I would say because he's this player, I would say yes.
So then let's tie up the Vince Wilfork reference you made, because 2004, Vince Wilfork was supposed to be like a top 10 pick. Texans pass on him, Bears pass on him, he falls all the way to 21. The Patriots probably weren't planning on taking a defensive tackle with that pick. They were probably thinking guard, maybe they were going to take Steven Jackson was there, but Wilfork being there ended up being that game changer. So it's that explanation that makes me okay with them going linebacker. If it is the guy, the person they know is going to be a stud, the way that they probably felt about Vince Wilfork, then you say, okay, yeah, maybe we do pass up on some other needs.
And they're not nearly as stacked at linebacker now as they were with interior defensive linemen then, right? You had Richard Seymour, first rounder in 2001. You had Ty Warren, first rounder in 2003, the year right before Wilfork ends up getting picked, but the value's so good, Tom, they had to jump on it.
Yeah, and they had Keith Traylor, they had, Ted Washington was cruising through. So again, whether they trade up, whether they stay put, whether they go offense, whether they go defense, would most of us agree, aside for Giles, who's going to have 2 bald spots on either side of his head from tearing his hair out? Would you say the Patriots did what they ought to do before we get to the rest of your picks?
I do. And I know I compared him to Jamie Collins because I was trying to think of an athletic linebacker who had length and size to give them some juice at the second level. But he really is different from Collins in that he brings a lot to the table off the field as well. He's a 2-time captain. And I'm not saying that Jamie Collins was a bad fit in the locker room.
No.
He wasn't. But he just, Lloyd, I think, brings a lot of Gerard Mayo qualities, quite honestly, when it comes to the worker he's going to be behind the scenes. He's absolutely already, by NFL people that I've spoken to, considered a film junkie and somebody who understands the game at a high level. He's not the most explosive hitter. They want guys a lot of times that can take on guards, whether it's your 250-pounder like Jamie Collins or Dante Hightower, or even a 235-pounder who just plays bigger than that like a Landon Roberts. That's not his style of game. He's more of a tackle slipper. He's more of a float and attack kind of linebacker than he is a physical specimen in that respect, but he'd give you a lot in coverage as well. I like the Fred Warner comp. I think if they could get that guy in New England, it'd be a huge hit.
All right.
Guys, this has been great. Thank you so much. I'm kicking you out now. We're going to roll through the rest of the first-round picks, and then I'm actually going to go through a 7-round Patriots-specific mock draft without you two bozos.
Sicko.
But we really do appreciate. I know, I am a sicko. It's an affliction. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to deal with it other than
Steer into it, man.
It's a podcast.
He's draft daffy.
All right, phenomenal stuff there from Tom Curran, DJ Bean. Thanks so much to those two for helping us out with this year's NBC Sports Boston Mock Draft Spectacular. Let's roll through the remainder of the first-round picks right now. So the Patriots took Devin Lloyd at number 21. At number 22, you have the Green Bay Packers going with a receiver, a player that I think would be a Patriots fit in Treylon Burks. The Packers, we know, need to add weapons for Aaron Rodgers, and they get a versatile, tough, athletic one in Burks. On to pick number 23 in the Cardinals. They're looking for a Christian Kirk replacement. He signed a big-time deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Serious head-scratcher, that one was, but they end up going with Jahan Dotson, who can play in the slot as Christian Kirk did. He's not quite as big as Kirk, but an explosive receiver in his own right out of Penn State. Pick number 24 is the Dallas Cowboys. They're going with a local guy, Zion Johnson. They need help up front on that offensive line. And Zion Johnson is a ready-made starter at guard from day one. He's like a superhero, BC coach Jeff Hafley told us on the Next Pats pod last week. Buffalo's up now at pick number 25, and they're going to go with a safety. A little bit of help from Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Who knows where those guys are at in terms of maybe potential future contract demands. They add a little bit of insurance at that safety spot with Daxton Hill out of Michigan. We talked about him earlier as a great Patriots fit. The Bills could even use him at corner opposite their stud, Tre'Davious White, if they really, really wanted to. Tennessee's up next, and Mike Vrabel, they know that champions are built through the trenches, and that's why they go with Bernard Raymond from Central Michigan. Should help clear the way for Derrick Henry early on in his career if the Titans want to use him from day one. He's ready to go as a run blocker, just probably needs a little bit of refinement. He's so new to that position in pass protection. Next up, Tampa Bay Bucks. The Tampa Bay Tom Brady's get Devontae Wyatt, a defensive tackle out of Georgia. Great athlete, should help them in their front seven. Then the Packers are up again with their second first-round pick. They're going to go with Tyler Linderbaum. More help for Aaron Rodgers, probably the best true center in this year's draft class. A little bit undersized, but a great athlete, knows what he's doing out there, comes from a great program run by Kirk Ferentz where they teach their offensive linemen well. The Chiefs are up with back-to-back picks. They go on the edge first, George Karlaftis from Purdue, and then they go with a receiver for Patrick Mahomes, Christian Watson, maybe pound for pound, the best athlete at receiver in this year's draft class, and there are a couple of absolute freak shows at that position. Pick number 31 now, it's the Bengals, the Super Bowl runners-up. They need a starter at corner. We saw what happened to them through the air against the Rams in that Super Bowl, so they're going to go with Kaiir Elam, play man-to-man coverage on the outside. Elam had a great year a couple years ago for Florida, trying to find his footing in terms of his best football, but he has all kinds of traits that you'd want to work with in the secondary. And the final pick of the first round, we're going with the Detroit Lions. They don't trade out, and they don't take a quarterback either, although that could be in play when draft day actually rolls around. They go with Lewis Seen, the safety out of Georgia. A heat-seeking missile from the back end, is so willing in run support, but also has the kind of twitchy athleticism that you need to play the pass. All right, so we're through the first round, and I know you're dying to know how the Patriots should attack the rest of draft weekend. Here's a scenario that I think would make them better in a variety of areas where they need help right away. And in the second round, they don't trade down, they actually trade up. Similar to what they did last year to land Christian Barmore, they send several picks to the Cleveland Browns, analytically minded Cleveland Browns. They want more picks if possible, and they move up from 54 to number 44 overall to take corner Kyler Gordon out of Washington. The Patriots so value change of direction ability at the corner spot, and Gordon might be the best in this year's draft class when it comes to that quickness and that acceleration that they're looking for. In the third round at pick number 85, the Patriots address what might be their most glaring need on their starting lineup right now, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And they get a guard. They get a little strange. They go with Cole Strange out of UT Chattanooga. Smaller program, yes, but he went to the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama, and was tremendous against some of the best players in the country that play on the interior of the defensive line. He could play a little center as well for you, so they lose Ted Karras, who had that center guard flexibility. Strange comes right in, and he'd be able to fill a similar role and be starting at guard opposite Micah Wenu. In the fourth round, I had the Patriots trading up again, sending a haul of day 3 picks to move up to number 142, and they take a Greg Schiano guy. You didn't think we were getting through this mock draft without Bill Belichick drafting one of his buddies' players, right? They get Bo Melton, the receiver out of Rutgers, ran in the 4.3s at the combine, has the flexibility to play inside and out. If they're looking for a succession plan for Jacoby Myers in last year of his deal, Melton makes a ton of sense. Last pick for the Patriots here, it's in the 6th round, and they go with a big brain along the defensive line. It's Thomas Booker from Stanford. He was a finalist for the Campbell Trophy, which is also known as the academic Heisman. He's a double major in communications and economics. But more importantly, from a Patriots perspective, he has some traits that they will love. Ran in the 4.9s at this year's combine at over 300 pounds. He has 11-inch hands to be able to control the action in the trenches. Could be a great complement to Devon Godshaw and Lawrence Guy up front. So that's it. Quite a haul for the Patriots. If you're asking me, you address needs at linebacker, at corner. You get a receiver and an interior offensive lineman as well. I think Patriots fans would be happy with that kind of package coming to them at the end of the draft. But you let us know. Leave a rating, leave a comment, leave a review. Let us know what you thought of this particular mock. If you have mocks out there that you would love to share them with us. And make sure you're keeping an eye out for our next Pats episode. We'll be coming at you with a fresh Next Pats episode as soon as the first round is over, so keep an eye out for that. We'll talk to you then.